Hello, everyone, and welcome to Full-on, your Fulham-centric football podcast. I'm your host, Ash Woolford. Joining me this week for Aston Villa preview is the full gang. Mozza.
I'm radiant. Thank you very much. Hope you're all well.
Yeah, all good, mate. And Drew, how you doing, mate?
I'm doing well, my friend. I'm doing well. Good to be here.
Good. And AJ, how you doing, mate?
All good. Excited for Full-on tour.
Yeah, obviously we are here to preview the Villa game for Saturday. One that for the first time ever we're all doing a trip together. So the whole Full-on gang should be there for the away day, which will be fun.
Been
Whether or not
practicing my
it'll be
signatures.
a performance from Fulham or not, we'll see. But hey, we'll discuss that now. Obviously, guys, it's a big game going into this one. We need to keep up some form of form, if there is such a thing as some sort of form with Fulham at the moment. I'll say that we haven't really had any formal season, other than the fact that we're consistently inconsistent. AJ, we spoke after the Southampton game about the squad that played, and we were worried about certain things that have happened. We know now that Rodrigo Muniz is likely to be out for the rest of the season and won't be involved on Saturday. Squad wise, what changes would you make from Southampton? What are you expecting, considering the fact that Muniz isn't available?
I don't think much changes up front. I think we're going to continue to use Raul and bring Vinicius on just to give Raul a little breather at the end of the game. Um, Outside of that, I'm expecting Sessegnon to find his place back on the wing, with potentially finding himself on that left-hand side with Wilson out on the right, if not Traore, and then either Iwobi to continue his spell in the number 8 role that he had last week, or we might see Emil Smith Rowe after that goal that he scored in the previous game, and finding his place again in the squad. Not that I necessarily agree with that placement, but it can be very easy after someone that's been out of form and has recently scored to want to throw them back in hopes that they can carry on in confidence. So we'll see from Marco. But outside of that, I expect Robinson back in the fold as well.
Yeah, it's going to be an interesting one, really, in terms of squad rotation, if there's going to be any. Weirdly, this is when we were looking about the games that we have left of the season and where we're going to pick up points. This isn't one that I actually had down for us to win anyway. Obviously, we still need to fight and get a result, and if we can get any points, then that'd be great for our push for Europe. But it's an interesting one because Aston Villa are a really difficult team to play, especially at home. They've had some really decent results at home in the last couple of months. Considering that, they beat Newcastle 4-1. They beat PSG at home. They beaten Forest and stuff like that. They've had really good results of late. Drew, Villa are one of those clubs that they're a massive club. We have to be honest, they are a massive club. They've had a great year considering the fact they've got to the Champions League, but it hasn't really affected their Premier League status and the way they play. Do we look at them as maybe some form of like inspiration if Fulham are going to get Europe and what we need to do in order to, put a squad together that means you're not completely destroying your chances in the league? Because obviously one of the things we've discussed is if Fulham were to make Europe, just how much of a negative effect that might have on the squad in the terms of, how much building we'd have to do.
Not really. I mean, Villa are next tier. I mean, the thing with Villa is that they don't really understand how big they actually are. They recently announced they're going to, I think it's the North Stand. They're looking to redevelop, obviously to increase their capacity at Villa Park, and no doubt they'll fill it. I think they have been. I think they're in terms of their development, in terms of their quest for European success. I think they're a little bit further ahead than us, and they've got more spending power. I really can't see Fulham spending massively to try and make the jump. I still think it will be incremental, and although it would be incredibly exciting, if we did try and go out on a limb, if we do make Europe to make a splash, it would also be something that we haven't really done under Silva, because it's always been sort of slow progress and deliberate progress. Villa have obviously Rashford's out for the season, and things have started to I wouldn't say they're losing their way, but obviously they lost heavily in the semi-final of the Cup to Palace. They were higher than they were in the league earlier in the season, but now they've slipped down to 7th. The way I see this game, this isn't about us trying to catch Villa. This is about us trying to keep the teams at 9th and 10th from overtaking us. Because even if we win on Saturday, Villa are still going to be, 4 points ahead of us? 3 points. 3 points ahead of us. So it's going to be a really, really tough game. But the answer to your question is no, I don't see them as being a template for us, Ash, because they're so much bigger and they're further along in their quest for European football, and they've got much more spending power than we have. We're more likely. I'm trying to think who we're likely to be. I mean, I imagine we're probably closer to Forest in terms of, our aspirations than we are Villa. Because Villa, I mean, if they really put their minds to it and backed it, I mean, they could quite easily, in my view, establish themselves on a regular basis as a top 5 team in the league. But this is Aston Villa, so they'll probably get relegated next season. That.
Well, one of those things, you look at that Villa squad, it is an exceptional squad. They managed to use their status as a Champions League team this year to bring in some really big names. It's obviously helped them find some stability in the Premier League as well because of that. I've watched Villa play 3 or 4 times this year and been very impressed with the football that I've seen them play. We all know how good of a manager Unai Emery is. He's done a fantastic job there. And if anyone watched their home leg against PSG in the Champions League, I know they went out just in the Champions League to them, but the performance that night was absolutely superb from them. I go into this game, I don't really expect anything. I'm not expecting Fulham to even get a draw in this game. Weirdly, I do think Villa are, as you say, that they are probably a step ahead. But there are things obviously we need to look for in this game from Fulham. We want to see fight. We want to see spirit. And you never know. We played bigger teams this season and got results. It's only a couple of weeks since we beat Liverpool, obviously. Mozza, looking at Fulham in this game, right, do you expect us to sort of play a similar way we did against Liverpool in the sense of trying to maybe not play our full-on passing like we always do, maybe adapt slightly, or are you just expecting Marco to do what Marco usually does and just has us playing our own way, and if it works, it works. If it doesn't, it doesn't.
I think that's exactly what's going to happen, as much as I hate to say it. I want to be positive, but how many times in these preview shows have we said we need to be up for it, we need to show fight, especially most recently as well, and then it hasn't happened. So it's not that I want to tempt fate or anything, but Marco Silva himself has said these are cup finals. These last 4 or 5 games are cup finals. But what is our cup final aesthetic? What is our mindset? And I think you summed it up perfectly well. It's been said before, we're consistently inconsistent. So I don't know. I don't know what our cup final mindset is. It certainly shouldn't be anything like it was how we went out to Palace. I have a horrible feeling we are going to do the typical Fulham thing of pressing them for the first 20 minutes, being all over them, and Villa will just sit back, because there's a chance Villa are going to be quite fatigued, as we've discussed, from their last couple of games, which were quite close together. And they'll do what a fair amount of teams have done against us this season. They let us push, they let us press, and then they counter-attack, and then they get these goals in. Like we might end up having 6-7 shots on target, most of the possession in the game, but we just make silly mistakes. And then our heads will drop. We'll go 1-0 down, for example, and not be in the game anymore. As I say, I hate to be negative. Like you said, Ash, I don't expect a draw from this either. I don't even know what my prediction is going to be later. But it would be a pleasant surprise, wouldn't it, if we did turn up to the races and we had a game like we did against Liverpool. So I don't know if any of you guys can comment on what our mindset, what our cup final mindset should be. What does Silva mean by that exactly? Because it's anyone's guess, and I'm sorry to not be decisive.
Well, the worrying thing is if he's talking about cup finals, and the way we've absolutely wet the bed in quarterfinals and semi-finals over the last couple of years, I don't really want to know what our cup final mentality is. You know, for me, Saturday is going to be all about attitude. It's not necessarily going to be about the result. It's going to be about the work rate, the effort that players put in. You know, we've got an awful lot of players that we've all criticised over this season about, you know, maybe some of the quality that they put out there. You know, you look at someone like Andreas Pereira, who at the beginning of the season we were all moaning about like the effort and the quality, but over the last couple of months, the effort's been amazing. The quality, yeah, but like the effort has been brilliant, and I think that's what we're going to have to see. We're going to have to see a lot of this sort of this team sort of unity that we keep being shown that we have. If anyone who follows any of the Fulham players on social media, we look like we got the greatest team effort there is out of anyone. The problem is often it's not always seen on the pitch, and that can be a bit of a worry. You know, we go into this game, you know, we're gonna have to fight hard on Saturday to get anything out of this game. And certain players are going to have to show up if that happens. You know, we talk about ESR and the fact that, you know, he's not always the player you want when you're going into a battle because he sometimes shies away. But, you know, I made comments like that on Saturday about he's coming on, well, this game's over. And then he put in one of the best performances he's put in months on Saturday. You know, he was very direct, he was very attacking, and that's exactly what we need. We need players that just do their jobs correctly and play well. I think AJ made an interesting point about Cess playing on the left. You know, for me, Alex Iwobi needs a break. And if there's a game out of the three that we got left that we were going to sort of give him a rest in it, for me, it would be this one. Because you look at the Everton game, we're going to be at home. The impetus is going to be on us to battle in that one. You look at Brentford away; it's the exact same thing, and we need Alex Iwobi with fresh legs because he hasn't looked like he looks like he's been dead on his feet for months, and it's not even a joke how much we keep saying it. And it's not even just us; it's everyone who watches Fulham say he just looks so knackered. And I think we have to remember, like ESR, this is the most football he's ever played in his career in one long go. I know ESR's had a couple of injuries but this season, but it's still the most games of football he's played a season since he was at youth level, and that's just not the same intensity as the Premier League is. For me, AJ, I'll ask you about this one. You know, we've had a few discussions about, you know, seeing some of the youngsters being put into the squad, you know, blooding them in a bit, seeing what they've got for the rest of the season. Is this a type of game where maybe not playing as from the start, but it would be good to have them on the bench as options? Because, you know, if you end up in a position where the game's gone or there's nothing on, it would be good to give them some minutes. Or is this the sort of game where you go, no, absolutely not? You don't even think about putting players on in a game like this because there's going to be so much pressure on us and so much, you know, effort needed to get anything out of it that we have to concentrate more on, you know, playing the players that we know we can almost rely on.
If you were asking me because you were expecting a balanced answer, you're not going to get one because I've been headstrong since probably about November that these players should be in and around the squad, be it on the bench. We're the only team that I can think of in the league that aren't regularly blooding in a youth player into their team. Even the likes of Man City are doing so, and they've got a squad that costs more than they've got a bench that costs more than Crystal Palace and Nottingham Forest's starting lineups put together, and that's considering that Nottingham Forest got a slap on the wrist for spending a fuck ton of money. I mentioned those three teams in particular because obviously you've had the cup rounds recently where they were in question. But yeah, it's one of those. We're the only team not blooding in youth, and I think that's starting to show with the way some of our older players are really starting to fatigue, and we don't have the sort of young blood around them with full of energy, constant running. Realistically, who have we got in the squad that runs non-stop regardless of their fitness levels? I can't think of anyone other than maybe Harrison Reed, and he's been out of the squad for a long time too. So even just for their work ethic and their youthful energy, they should be in and around the squad, let alone playing. So that's my opinion on the matter.
Yeah, it's an interesting one. Drew, we've spoken quite a lot about certain youngsters we have, in that under 21 squad, especially. You look at Goddo, you look at King, you look at Callum Osman. Callum Osman, I think for me, is a prime example of a player that maybe should be getting into the first team squad, because if I had an option between bringing on a young striker who's scored a ton of goals this season, has got energy and got movement, or Carlos Vinicius to come on for the last 10 minutes, I think I'd rather the youngster. What about you?
Yeah, I mean, I'm all for a youth movement. But while Silva thinks Europe's within his grasp, he's just not going to take those sort of risks, because that's just not who he is. I've said that before, and I understand where he's coming from, because ultimately it's a results orientated business. But it does make me smile when he talks about, we've got 4 cup finals left, we've got 5 cup finals left. We haven't got the energy. We haven't got the energy to perform at cup final level for 4 or 5 games. We just don't. We've got the third oldest squad in the league. We've got our starting striker is now, how old's Raul? Is he 32, 33? Bless him. Technically a brilliant
34,
yeah, technically a brilliant footballer, but he can't give you 90 minutes of hard charging. In terms of the rest of the squad, ironically enough, I think Palace showed the way to beat Villa. Sit deep and then hit them on the break. But Palace have got more explosive players than us. So I'm not sure that's going to work either. I mean, Silva's going to want to dominate the ball, and I'm not sure we're going to be able to dominate the ball against Villa. I'm really not. But going back to your question about the youngsters, yeah, I would happily try some of them. Not start them, but I'd happily try some of them. You've already mentioned Osman. Goddo, I wouldn't have a problem with. King, I mean, we've all been salivating about him. The few glimpses we've seen of him, he does look like he could actually make a proper dent in a top 6 club. But yeah, it's not going to happen this weekend. It's not going to. We're going to be recycling what we've been playing recently, because Silva's not going to take those sort of risks. But I'm with you. If we're losing, especially if we're losing heavily, I don't see the point of bringing on Carlos Vinicius, because we know what he is. Yeah, Harrison Reed, I love him, but we know what he is. Yeah. So I would like to see the kids, but it's not going to happen. What's going to be interesting is how. I mean, obviously we haven't finished this season yet, but when we start next season, and you've got people like Luke Harris who've come back from loan, you've got people like King who's going to be turning 18. Sessegnon will have had a full season under his belt and still only be 24, 25. Goddo will obviously be a year older. I think the pressure to play the youngsters next year, I think, is going to increase significantly. And that's going to be interesting to see how Silva deals with that. But this season, I'm sorry to be a bit of a party pooper, Ash, but I think Silva's going to go with what he believes is a tried and trusted. But the tried and trusted do not have the energy, as you've already pointed out, to perform cup final level for 4 games, bless them. And they've all been, I mean, we can criticise them individually, but by and large, if we'd have been sitting here in 1st of August last year and you'd have told us we were sitting in 8th with 4 games to go and Europe on the cards, there's not one person on the Ful-on crew that would have gone, nah, it's all right. We'll leave that. We'd have all had it. We'd have all had it. So they should all be credited for that. But it's the next level, Ash, isn't it? We've talked about it.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah,
it's the next level.
I think the thing for me is we have to remember that this Fulham team have gone and played some really big games this season. Some away from home. You look at Chelsea away, United away in the cup. Even playing Arsenal at home, Liverpool at home. These are big games against really difficult teams to play. None of them have blown us away. In fact, we've got results out of most of those out of quite a lot of those games because of the way that sometimes we have the ability to pull a performance out that surprises us. And we know that we've made many jokes this season about Santa Fulham or Fulham playing Robin Hood and the gifts we like to give against smaller teams or the teams lower in the league. Obviously, not meant to be patronising if I say it's smaller, but when you look at us playing against teams that are above us in the league and hard to play against, look at Newcastle home and away. They were 2 outstanding performances against a very difficult team. So it's one of those ones where if you're a Fulham fan going into this game and you're really optimistic and you have a view that we can get a result, I'm not going to blame you for that. No, I don't think anyone's going to turn around and say that you're silly for that. I think for me, I'm just not expecting anything personally, and it's one of those ones that you have to go, I just want to see a performance. I want to turn up at Villa Park on Saturday, spend some time with you lovely boys, and then see Fulham put in a performance that we can be, even if we lose, we can go, you can see the heart, you can see the spirit, rather than just bending over and getting torn a new one and walking away going, wow.
Can I just come back on that point, Ash? When I don't think Villa are playing particularly well, and I don't think they've got the wind in the sails they did have at the beginning of the season.
Mm-hmm.
But we talked about it and we've referenced it quite a lot. I do not want to see the reaction that we had when we missed the penalty in the game at Craven Cottage, where, what was it, Ash, 25, 30 minutes? We were basically nowhere. And, even if Villa are having a hard time, last 7 games against Fulham, they've won 6 of them. Yeah, they're still 7th in the league. They've still got 57 points. They've still got some really good players. And without energy levels where they are, you can see it going wrong, can't you? That's what worries me. So I'm totally with you. If the boys come out, and give it 100%, but they end up getting carried off the field on their shields, I'll totally take that. That would probably mean more to me, than anything else I've seen recently. And bearing in mind what I was saying to you about the Southampton game, I'm sorry, but if we play like we did in the first half against Southampton, we'll all be getting beers at half-time and not bothering coming out for the second half.
Yeah, it's one of those. Look, lads, let's finish this one the way we always do. Players to watch from both teams, and a scoreline prediction. Mozza, I think I'm going to start with you, mate. Give us a player to watch from both teams and a scoreline prediction, please.
So it kind of ties in both these players with what I was going to predict. I wonder if Issa Diop will be starting this game, because he can be quite a bully, and I think if he's going to bully anyone, it needs to be Ollie Watkins. I know that's the most obvious answer I can say for the Villa player to watch. I say this because I think Anderson hasn't been quite on form recently, and he's not the only one. But whether that will happen or not, I pretty much agree with Drew when he said Silva will stick with what he knows is tried and tested. So I won't get my hopes up for that. Failing Diop making an appearance at all, I would say the one to watch for us would be Harry Wilson, because to me there is something about him that is screaming he's going to score a goal, and I don't think Jimenez or Vinicius, if he plays, will score a goal for us. So those are mine. Scoreline prediction, I hate to say it, hate to be negative, but I have to say I think it will be 2-1 Villa.
Okay, that's not too negative. I don't think that is too negative, to be absolutely fair with you. Drew, how about you, mate? Player to watch on both teams and a scoreline prediction.
Tielemans for Villa, because he's been one of the most consistent players. Absolute steal for them. I know that they've got some cracking players. I know people will talk about Bailey, and they'll talk about Rodgers, but Tielemans for me will be crucial. We got to win the midfield battle. For Fulham, can't believe I'm saying this, but ESR. I've got a sneaky feeling he's due. Don't ask me why, but I think, and you've already touched on this, Ash, when you've made the comments you've made about Pereira. Silva is clearly in ESR's corner, clearly backing him, comes out fighting for him in the media, probably more than he does, I would argue, any other player. So ESR is going to be given every opportunity, and we're not favourites. So you never know. It might work out for him, but the problem is, and Ash, you've highlighted this many a time, I don't expect Fulham to have the ball as much as they did at Southampton for obvious reasons, and it's ESR without the ball that worries me. But I'm going to pick ESR and Tielemans for Villa. I think Fulham will score because I think Villa have got the capacity to have a brain fart, but I do worry. I do worry. I think it might end up the same as it did at the Cottage, 3-1.
Yeah, I think it's one of those ones, isn't it? That very easily could happen. I think. Well, you spoke about it, obviously, about the game at the Cottage, and that 25 minutes. That 25 minutes it's been one of the worst moments of the season because I've never seen a whole collective 11 players on the pitch completely look like they've seen a ghost and just like white out for 20. I've never seen it before, and it really put the dampeners not only in that game but probably for about 3 or 4 weeks afterwards. It was a real concern, wasn't it, when we look at that. AJ, how about yourself, mate? Players to watch for both teams and a scoreline prediction.
Players to watch. I'm going to go with Ollie Watkins, mostly because of the question marks around his amount of game time recently. There's been a lot of pressure on Emery about not letting him transfer to Arsenal in the January window and then not playing him as regularly as he is expecting to play. And he's got a little bit defensive of it himself and saying that, like, I want to be playing football. And I think Fulham present an opportunity for them to play Ollie Watkins because he offers a lot against teams like us, or at least that's the way it looks on paper. So I think Ollie Watkins will probably start and will be something to keep an eye on because he's got a point to prove, whether or not it's to push for a transfer in a couple of months or whether or not it's to ensure that he gets back his frankly deserved place in the Villa lineup. He's not a player I would have even considered, had you asked me in the summer, not a player I had considered would likely be dropped by Aston Villa. So quite a surprise he's in this situation now. Fulham player to watch, I've got to agree with Drew, but for very different reasons. It's Emile Smith-Rowe, and I think it's because, as I said during my my talk about the squad predictions, I expect him to play in some capacity for quite a while during the game, if not start, because of his goal in the last game and the fact that Marco backs him, whether or not he backs him because of his price tag or whether or not he backs him because he's trying to encourage him and create a positive atmosphere around the player. Don't know, don't care, but if we can get another performance out of him, then that's all I care about. But I'm saying keep your eyes on him because of the circumstances around him. Score prediction, it's full on on tour. It's all four of us going to a game. It's going to be 0-0.
I'll take that.
Yeah, I'll go with that.
Yeah,
AJ.
get us the nearest pub to celebrate afterwards. Yeah. Get us the nearest pub to celebrate afterwards. What I'm saying. No, look, For me, we have to look at. I think that's a great shout in what you said. For me, both teams, both players to watch are linked quite well. Marcus Asensio is the player for me to watch Villa. He is a Rolls Royce of a footballer. He is an outstanding footballer. The fact that they managed to sign him, even though they are in the Champions League this year, is one hell of a signing for Aston Villa. And the player for me to watch for Fulham is actually Leno. And the reason why they tie into each other is Marcus Asensio loves scoring an absolute banger, and Leno loves being beaten from any distance further than his arms. Like, so it's one of those things that it's like, as much as I love Leno, he gets beaten from distance too much for my liking. Um, Villa are not afraid to shoot from distance. They do it a lot. It's one of the way that Emery plays. He's very progressive in the sense of if you have an opportunity, take that opportunity, have a shot. He doesn't care about it. And Asensio has scored in games I've watched Villa play this season at least 5 times from outside the box. And it worries me that he has the ability to cause some major damage by doing that. Obviously, Ollie Watkins, naturally, he's probably got an awful lot to prove in this game with, the whole Marcus Rashford coming in, sort of taking his spot, and then now he's out injured for the rest of the season. But funny enough, is being linked to move to Barcelona, which is the sort of similar games he's playing at Man United. But we won't lead into conspiracies. That is just what that is. Villa are a really good team. Fulham are going to really have to be on it. If we're going to get anything out of the game on Saturday, Leno's going to have one of the better games he's had this season. There's an awful lot of players that want to see put some rights, some wrongs that we saw in the home game against Villa, especially that 25 minutes where we missed a penalty and everyone just went completely blank. There's a few players that were really at fault for that 25 minutes. Andreas Pereira being one of the main one probably. And I want to see a reaction. For me on Saturday, win or lose or draw, I'm not expecting anything. All I want is a performance, and I want to see some of that famous TikTok, team spirit that we seem to have put together actually on the pitch, and us seeing it. And as Drew rightly said, if we lose, if they all get carried out on their shields because of the effort they put in, I'll go away happy. Because what I don't want is Fulham to become on the beach FC again. I know there's only 3 games left this season, not 18 like last. But I don't want to be in a position where, we are just coasting for the last 3 games of the season, especially when one of those games is against Brentford and they could potentially be fighting for Europe with us. That is the last thing that we need as a football club. That's the last thing the world.
Beach in Birmingham.
Yeah.
So
Ash, just out of interest, and I don't know if any of you know this, did Silva post the Villa game ever discuss what happened in that period in the first half? Because I've never quite, to this day, worked out why we reacted or didn't react.
There was Jack Kelly did a interview with him about 3 or 4 weeks after the game, and he asked him about it, but mainly around about the reaction the players had. And then any of you guys, Jack Kelly's a great Fulham journalist, obviously a Fulham fan, and he always asks questions that he should ask. And I think Marco basically just admitted that they was just they were a bit shocked about what had happened, and I think it was just a couple of minutes of football where it really went against us. If missing a penalty could be going against you, but and the players, the reaction from it was just really, really bad, and it was clearly a mental issue. What I do find funny is that for the rest of this season, we've not had a 25. We haven't had a 25 minutes like that where something's gone against us and then the whole team are just completely blanked out. We've had a few games this season where something's really gone against us and it's actually galvanized the team a little bit. I think Tottenham away is probably one of those that sort of stands by that. When after Kenny got sent off, they really all stood up.
The only other similarity, sorry, Ash.
No. I think that for me, that's all I want to see on Saturday is that performance where they come together and we see, if we get something from the game, amazing, absolutely amazing. But I just want to see for once the squads standing up for each other and going in. ESR, as we all said, is probably prime for that this weekend because I don't want to see ESR the warrior. I'm not expecting that. But what I want to see is him going into the game with the confidence that he should have, because he's a confidence player. And I think that's been part of the problem with him, especially, is that there's been a little bit of abject confidence. And I think that is the same thing that we had in that 25 minutes of football where we missed a penalty. Villa then obviously went and down the other end and did a bit of damage, and everyone just completely looked like they'd been rocked 1-2 by Ali, and it was just a bit of a concern, wasn't it?
Yeah. The only other performance I say performance probably wrong. It was the Wolves game, but that was slightly different because we just weren't at it from the beginning. But there was nothing in that game that caused us, to react badly. We just came out flat. But you're quite right. Well, that was probably attack. You have to give credit to Chelsea because they made the change. But I'm just thinking about what Ash has said. He's quite right in my mind. I can't think of another game we've played where we have just the Villa game still stands out, and it will stand out for that very reason. The Wolves game, that was after the international break, and the team were just flat when they took the pitch. It wasn't like they started well; they were just not at it at all. But yeah, I think Ash is right. I mean, the Villa game just seems to stand out for me.
It was just that moment. It was just that moment that sort of proper solidifies about we've had it. We've played against teams and we've done it. Sometimes you nick a goal against the run of play and then suddenly you're the team that's on top. Well, that's what happened. Obviously, we miss a penalty. Villa go down the other end and score, and then we spend 20 minutes where everyone's just like looking at each other. They basically what they needed somebody on the pitch to just go, right, lads, let's go. And it's like they were all looking at each other, and not a single one of them was stepping up to be that person to go, right, let's go. And that obviously became a bit of an issue, And I think this is where we've had that problem where we've got an awful lot of old players in our squad. We're the oldest squad in the league, but not necessarily a ton of leaders on the pitch, And that sometimes has been a real issue for us. But we go on Saturday. Fundamentally, if we win, our push for Europe is mega on. If we can get anything out of the game, then we're not losing too much distance. I think that's the most important thing. And even if we lose, we just need to, as I keep saying, it's all about the attitude and the performance. We can lose with our heads held high, great. If we lose and just completely look like we've been rocked again, I think we'll carry that into the remaining games of the season. It'll just be an absolute killer for us. Right, lads, thank you very much for joining me on this one. Obviously, as we've said a few times, this Saturday is our podcast's away day. We're all going together. So if you do see us at the game, come say hello, obviously. It's always nice to chat about it. Come follow us on Twitter. Come follow us on Blue Sky. Thank you very much, everyone who has come and followed the podcast on YouTube and subscribed recently. We are still doing the giveaway from our store. If you fancy buying anything from our store, the link is on the page now. You see it at Ful-on podcast.myshopify.com. We have some really good Fulham merch on there. Not all labelled with our logo as well. So have a look. Other than that, guys, have a good weekend. Hopefully, no matter what, Fulham don't let us down. There's nothing really much more to say other than come on, you whites.